Okay, back on with your discussion topics. We're now entering Fans Pulse Lap. I think it's 2. The graphic says 3, but we'll let it go anyway. Anyway, another interesting one. I hope you'll agree. We're going to have a chat about just how much a successful rider depends on having a successful and skilled spanner-wielding mechanic in his pits bay. So we're asking the question, in effect, what is the value of a great mechanic? So we know there are some super talented speedway mechanics who do the circuit, and they have done for years. They move from rider to rider, team to team. They can take back bikes apart and rebuild them with their eyes closed. Guys, you've all been there. Simon, you're still there, week on week in your pit space. So, Crabby, I'll come to you first of all. What is the value, Nigel, from a rider's perspective of having a mechanic that you trust and can leave all that good stuff to?
Obviously, yeah, I mean, you've got to be able to trust them. But I think nowadays it's totally different to my day. I possibly had 3 or 4 in my time. My father-in-law, he used to help me for a time. Then I had Steve Santa, used to be a rider. He helped me, which was good. And then the lad that helped me for quite a lot of years, a lad called Martin, he was very good. Just maybe simple things, you'd come in from a race and say, you need to just sort that corner out. They're catching you there. Do you not think you should go down a gear, up a gear, whatever? And it's in the back of my mind. I knew I needed to change sprocket. And he would say that to me, and he'd bring it to the front of my mind and say, yeah, let's do it. So, yeah, I can remember that happening on more than one occasion. Yeah, but a good one. Another lad I used to have at Glasgow, Fraser. Everybody will know Fraser, don't they?
Yes.
Surely. Well, Fraser used to help Bosey, didn't he? And he got, as he was helping me for a time, and you've got to know that when them lads take that back wheel out, change sprocket, put it back in, tighten it up, check everything's tight. Last thing you need to happen going down the front, going down the straight, and front wheel come out or something daft like that. So these things all have to be checked, and I never had a problem really with any of it. Just a little bit of a funny story. I had both Martin and Steve helping me one night. It was the Pride of the Potteries at Stoke. And I'd gone out and had 4 wins. Bearing in mind, I was never the best tempered sort of a person.
Really? Yeah.
And as I come off the last corner in my last race, I was leading it, and the chain broke. Oof. And I finished at the back. All 3 passed me. Finished at the back and went from winning it to finish 4th or whatever. I went up into the pits and neither of them were anywhere to be seen. I ended up having to pack all my own stuff away and everything because, I wasn't the best tempered so. But no, they'd gone, vanished, never saw them for ages.
See, Nicky Pedersen gets a bad rep for that, and there's Nigel Crabtree doing it back in the day.
Well, I don't know, but they knew what I was like, didn't they? So it wasn't their fault. They knew what I was like.
One quick aside, Nigel. On last week's episode, we talked about rider psychology. And if riders did certain tricks to try and gain an advantage over other riders, right? So I do apologise, but one of our subscribers on our YouTube channel messaged and said that they knew of some top riders back in the day who used to put on your sprockets, you would write the number of teeth on the sprocket, right? Some riders apparently used to put on the wrong number so that when other riders tried to copy them, they couldn't. They didn't know how many.
I think that stemmed from Ivan Major, I think, many, many years ago. I believe Ivan was the instigator of that, from what I hear.
Did Bellevue in a British final or something, or a world final?
Something like that, Simon. I can't just remember.
Yeah, he put if he had a 58 sprocket, he put like a 61 on it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I love it. Mind games. Stuart McDonald, back on topic about great mechanics. What's your insight, Stuart? You rode very successfully for a long time. I don't know how many mechanics you might have gone through, Stuart, but what's the qualities of a good mechanic in your eyes?
Well, when I was really young at Glasgow, I had the fortunate pleasure of having Steve Lawson's ex-mechanic Ian Proctor with me when I was starting out, and from my very first meeting, Derek, Ian, I drove in with the van, Ian would get the bike out the back, go and set it up, and I was blown away. He did everything for me, made sure everything was right in the bike, and it was my sort of first experience of it. And you talk about how important some of these people are in Speedway. I think the mechanics are one of the most important. Like Nigel says there, these two mechanics they were gone. They were in the bar. The chain came off. He was going to tear them to bits. And I think with the mechanics nowadays, they're so got to be so precise, in what they do. But like, see, when I rode in the day with Nigel, I had Ian Proctor, I had Graham Coleman, who's Les. Everybody knew Les through the whole of the Speedway. I was fortunate enough to have Big Danny, if you know Derek, Danny did the track.
Yeah, Danny Gibb.
My brother Alistair, my dad at the very start, away matches, wow, he wasn't really bothered about screwing the clutch, he was only bothered about getting anybody that knocked me off the bike. And that was one thing that Nigel will back me up with. He chased, I don't know how many riders through a track, honestly. Dad, the bike needs fuel, I'm getting him. So, mechanics, back in the day, like Big Frap as well, Big Frap, I mean, see when we were at Glasgow, I think we had probably not just the best team, but the best team of mechanics. You think about some of the mechanics in that day pits, Nigel, at the time, you're talking about Martin, you talk about some of the guys that Big Frappa, you had Les, and it was just phenomenal backing. Everybody helped each other, and I think that was a big part of it. And you talk about how much you mean in mechanics. You will all remember Chris Adams changing, I think, was it Sam Masters' back wheel? Heat 15, Simon, I think, was at Ipswich, and he literally changed the back wheel in like 20 seconds, 25 seconds. The cameras were on him. It's the final race. Sam had to get and win it to win the match, I think it was, for Wolves, and he's swapping wheels at the starting tapes, and you think, wow, and that was like 20, 30 seconds. So, I was blessed with having really, really good mechanics. They did everything for me. I will mention one mechanic that I actually forgot to turn my fuel taps on, and that was Big Danny at Newport. I got out at the start, and it was probably one of the only starts I made, I think, in that sort of time. And all I heard was, "Brrr," and I just put my hands down, fuel was switched off. I looked over my shoulder and Danny ducked down because Newport, the fence, you were right at it, remember? And he ducked down, you could see me looking at him. He was too big to go and argue with, but I gave him a good go. But I think mechanics, if you've got the trust, you can't go wrong. The last thing you need is somebody to say, where does the fuel go? But one thing that Speedway has a lot of is blessed mechanics, I will say that. And they're always willing to help no matter what side they're on, by the way. They always will help you.
There's a lot of good guys who do that circuit, and I know at Glasgow, and I know it happens at every track. There's some guys who geographically live nearer Glasgow, but they'll pop up and they'll spanner for visiting riders as well. Simon, we've talked about trust and obviously a capable mechanic who knows mechanically what they need to do to look after the bike, etc., on behalf of the rider. But do you, from a personal perspective, do you look for more than that from your mechanic? Do you look for someone who can have a word with you or calm you down or anything of that nature?
I've always been pretty good with mechanics, to be fair. I've always said this from day one, right? If you're my mechanic, not that it's a privilege for you, but I'm blessed with them, because it's like, I put it as simple as this: my life is in their hands. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's scary enough being on the track and dangerous enough. The last thing you want is, has he done this right? Have they done that right? Do you know what I mean? I would rather. I'm not a top mechanic, but I'm not scared to ask for help. But I had Liam Rumsey with me for probably 17 years, with maybe a year and a half's gap where I got a full-time Polish man in Radek. And that wasn't any fault of Liam's or anything. It was just, he did everything for me. And not long I had a little boy and work and Speedway. I was doing 3 leagues. It was just too much for me. Do you know what I mean? And he literally did everything. I was very fortunate, but again, it come at a cost. Whereas Liam's helped me, I actually not got rid of him, because that's not the right word, but we parted ways this year.
Yeah.
We're still best mates off track. We'll forever be best mates. And I got young Mickey Simpson to give me a hand. I just felt I needed maybe a bit of a change. We'd not gone stale as such, but Liam knew me inside out and I knew him. But he would tell me this, but everyone's different, you know. Sometimes you need a bit more motivational. I don't pay mega bucks to the mechanics, but they cost you money. But I've always done it with Liam and Mickey. I put them on a points performance as well.
Okay, interesting.
If I score so many,
yeah.
they get paid so much. You know, if I'm on 8 points going out for my last ride, I've probably not been riding very well, but somehow I've managed to blag 8 points. They get a bonus over 10. Not a lot, but it all helps.
Very good.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
you get a bit of a firmer pat on the back or on the bum.
Yeah.
Come on. You know what I mean? They want it as much as you. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, I've always been lucky, but I think you just got to have a good bond with them. And I've always had that with Liam. You know, it was brilliant. You know, the stories we could tell, we could probably get locked up for 20 years and write a hell of a book. But, you know, but with Mickey, like I say, he's a young lad and he's learning from me and he's putting it into practice this year on track as well in the National League. You know, he's doing good in that, and he's like I say, he's a young lad. He's keen, and that's what you need nowadays. He's keen. It's not about the money for him. He just appreciates and enjoys the time with me and learning. And obviously, we're quite lucky at Scunny because Dave's as good a mechanic as he is manager, if not better.
Okay.
So he's, like you said about Chris Adams, Dave's always there, and it's hard, you know. You got to think we're not allowed off the track now if there's a first bend incident.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Glasgow pit's a fantastic viewing, but it's a hell of a long way from the number 7 pit bay at Glasgow either side.
Yep.
Down to that second corner with a clutch cooler and a drop of fuel. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the mechanics need to be on their toes as well. So yeah, it's a crucial part of your team, I believe. And it's not just that, but it's also the hours you spend with them. You know, it's a long way for me to Glasgow, 6-7 hours. You've got to talk about...
Oh, stop whinging. Stop whinging about it. Yeah.
No, but you know what I'm saying. You have a lot to talk about, and if you sat there with someone that you don't really like or get on with,
I get it.
A bit harder.
Yeah.
When you've got someone you can bounce off and just talk rubbish to, it's quite cool, you know. I've always had not just mechanics, but their friends.
Yes. No, I like it, Simon. Mickey the Mixter, I think is a nickname, right? Young Mickey the Mixter. Yeah. Nigel, just to develop what Simon said. So, you know, I guess riders are individuals, right? They're all humans, they're individuals. One rider might want a particular trait from his mechanic that another rider doesn't. But the dynamic between the rider and the mechanic it's got to be spot on, right? Because as Simon has just said, you spend a heck of a lot of time in each other's lives.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, talk about paying mechanics. If I got sort of 12 from 3 rides, I used to buy him a fish and chip supper. But that 12 from 3 rides took a bit of doing, but that was it. Like, you know, I couldn't afford to pay him.
12 from 3 rides.
I think he's been with Shane Parker, mate, on that JD.
Hey, Yorkshireman.
Hey, Stuart.
So that's
paid a mechanic in my life, Derek. Never paid a mechanic in my life. Never.
Well, you get us Scotsmen a bad name, Stuart McDonald. was it just not a thing back then, Stuart? Is that why you're saying it? No.
Listen, like Nigel says, you'd buy them something for the chippy, you buy them a few pints. 9 times out of 10, the mechanics were the ones that were keeping the party in the bar going after it. But never once you used to offer them something. But do you know what? They were in it for the love of the sport and the love of you. They weren't doing it for, I want 150 quid. They done it for the love of the sport. And a lot of these guys were fans, fanatics.
Yes.
So you can imagine that getting to mechanic for, I don't know, you know, Nigel, Bosie, anybody, it was an honour. And these guys would actually pay their own way when they went away. It was some of them were that proud. They would buy me lunch, you know, and you think it was just the way it was back then. It's totally changed now, but definitely back then it was just like friends, family, like Simon said, you've got to spend 7, 8, 9 hours with these guys, and see if you go on, it's a blast. See if you don't, it's a nightmare.
Yeah. And you think, you know, you look at the kind of modern speedway world, and you know, riders are, even lesser riders, if I can describe it that way, are riding in 3 different countries, right? So that's bikes in different countries, mechanics in different countries. The logistics and the financial side of that must be quite alien to when Nigel and you were riding, Stuart.
Definitely. I mean, we had one bike and a spare engine, or maybe two bikes if we were lucky. And wherever the meeting was, the van and the bikes went. There was no leaving bikes in Poland or leaving bikes in Sweden. It was, that's your bikes, and a lot of the riders back then would stick their engines in a bit of hand luggage to go to Sweden and stick the frame in a suitcase. And it's like now it's 3 bikes in Sweden, 4 bikes in Poland. God, we hardly had 7 bikes between us as a speedway team back then, because anybody with 2 bikes, it was a rarity. It was. A lot of them had. Nigel obviously backed me up with his old bike racks in the back of the cars. That was my first transport. Was a bike rack in the back of a car that was in a tow bar, and then after that, you'd fling the front wheel off and fling it in the back of an estate car. No big setups with beds and CCTV or Sky TV and that kind of thing. It was, let's have a wee kip in the back of the seat in the car or whatever it was. That's what it was like, and that's just the way it was. But we loved it. That was Speedway for you, and that's what made it, I think, so special.
That was a life back then.
Also, Derek, Speedway could afford it then. Now it seems to have lost its way, and Speedway can't afford to run like it is running, can it? One way or another, it has to be stopped and slowed down. One way, or I don't mean slowed down in speed. British Speedway needs to step back. Never mind Poland and everywhere. Step back and...
What some mechanics get paid now is more than what some people get paid a week at work.
Is that right, Simon? Yeah, you'll know. Yeah. I mean, Speedway can't afford that because it's got to come out of pockets.
Yeah.
If it's coming out the riders' pockets, it's coming out the club's pockets.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
And the clubs can't afford it.
It's going to be, here we are in June, towards the end of June, and we already know, and it's not a secret. It's going to be it's going to be a pivotal winter. I think we can all look forward to a lot of rumour, a lot of speculation, a lot of planning, a lot of information that we on 360 Speedway are going to be able to devour all winter long and talk about all winter long. But let's leave that till then. So there we are, Speedsters, 360 Speedsters, a bit of a download on what makes a great mechanic. There's been many great mechanics over the years. Norrie Allen springs to mind as one who was very much part of the World Championship circuit, and spannered for many a Grand Prix or a World Champion over the years, and many nowadays, listening to Simon and Nigel and Stuart, quite a different landscape these days, and and the pay rates are a lot better as well, Nigel.
Just interrupting you there, I remember going down to Exeter when Mark Loram rode for Exeter, and Norrie were his mechanic. And they used to go and ride in Poland on a Sunday, drive to Poland on, whatever day, Saturday, Sunday, whatever, drive back from Poland on a Sunday, leave Sunday afternoon, I'll take it after the meeting, straight down to Exeter for Mark to ride for Exeter on a Monday, him and Norrie. So talk about, like Simon says, if you don't get on, it's a long way, that is, from Poland to Exeter if you don't get on. Yeah.
It's enough to make you take up smoking or drinking, one of the two.
No, go on then.
That's why Norrie did it, didn't it?
Right, some more of your messages. Thanks again very much for those of you who have taken time and trouble to submit some comments, some messages. Anything goes. Choose your own personal preference in terms of which social media platform, even email or even WhatsApp that you choose to contact us. You'll see all the ways to contact us circulating the screen. Okay, Carol J from Chelmsford. Good evening, Clark. Normally by the end of June, 1 or 2 teams are strong favourites for the league. Not in this year's championship. Literally, any of 9 can win this. Brilliant, with a big exclamation mark. Yes, Clark, I've been saying this actually since the start of the season. I think the restoration of the 40-point team average at the start of the season this year did allow all of the championship clubs to strengthen to something close to the strength of the championship in 2023, which was particularly strong. And I think as a result of that, there's no lightweights. There's no lightweight teams. Every championship team has a chance on the road, and home form, I suppose, is questionable in some places already, as has been proven by Oxford, Plymouth, for example. But yes, any the top 4 clubs go to the playoffs, and anything can happen at that point. Right here, right now, it's early stages. You look at the Championship League table, and you can throw a blanket over all 9 teams pretty much, by and large. But it's too early just yet to tell if any 4 teams are likely to break away. But yes, a good point, well made, Clark. Keep flying the flag for the championship. Jess from Workington has been in touch. Hi Jess. At last, a league fixture and a win for the Comets. It took a long time, didn't it, to open your home league account. Spoke with the superb Plymouth fans who travelled. Credit to their club, as was NK Nikolai Clint, who scored I think it was a 6-ride maximum, right? 18-point maximum for Nikolai, and he was equally as impressive at Glasgow the night before. He was really impressive. Beat Chris Harris twice. Not too many visiting heat leaders achieved that. And Hookie, Jacob Hook, had a big night. I think he top scored with 10 points or so for the Comets. It was a real solid team performance by Workington, and it had to be to see off the Gladiators, who pulled out an early lead. Not the best of nights for Ben Barker again, and maybe had Ben produced what we all know that Ben's capable of, then maybe the Gladiators could have gone a whole lot closer. But big credit, as you say, Jess, to the Plymouth fans as well. I spoke to some of them at Ashfield in Glasgow on Friday night, and they were keen to get to vocally back their runners and riders at Glasgow and Workington, and that was quite a trip to take on from sunny Devon. Penultimately, I think, for this week, Kevin A has been in touch via WhatsApp. Thank you, Kevin A. Still on a high after those British GPs at the National Speedway Stadium. The racing entertainment was second to none. The crowd was suitably healthy. The whole show was sensational. Kevin, I don't know if you did see. I'm sure you did. 360 Speedway posted on Facebook earlier in the week some sort of one week on recollections of those British Grand Prix, and we received a whole abundance of favourable comments. Yes, there were some negatives. There was some critique in there as well, and maybe that's only to be expected. But generally, the feedback was absolutely superb, and all credit to Bellevue and the National Speedway Stadium for putting on a fantastic show. Glad you're still on a high, Kevin. And then finally for this week, Big H from Notts has been in touch. Hi Big H. And Big H says, hadn't been to Speedway in a while, had lost touch with some mates, did miss it. Some of your discussions reminded me how awesome it is, motivated me to go with my nephew. So I'm not sure which track, Big H, that you and your nephew have popped along to recently, but really, really pleasing. Not only that you're still keen on Speedway, that you're still keen enough to pick up your social media content, but super awesome for us at 360 to know that we might have been a sort of motivational factor for you to go back trackside. So keep up the good work, Big H. Let us know which club that you did go along to visit, and keep in touch. Listen, again, thanks for everyone who got in touch this week. You're welcome to get in touch, submit your comments, submit your questions as often as you like. No restrictions. And if you haven't done so yet, make next week your first time.